Hello and welcome to the second video in this series of modding web fishing and creating a custom map. So in the previous video, if you didn't watch it, I would highly recommend watching it because it's going to make doing this next section a lot easier and make a lot more sense. But essentially in the previous video, we decompiled the web fishing game. We set up a Godot project that lets us be able to edit the map and everything like that. And then we created an empty project, which we moved our mod files into. And then we packaged that out so that it would work with web fishing and specifically work with GDWeave and Lua. So this video is going to cover the basics of map editing. What we're going to do is, as you can see on screen, I have this model of a map. This is the Treasure Trove Cove model for Banjo-Kazooie. I'll put the credit for this file in the description. But essentially this is a model that I downloaded, and we're going to use this by bringing it into the web fishing project. I will show you some interesting bits and pieces about bringing 3D models into Godot that it's a bit trickier than it seems at first. But once you get the hang of it, it's totally fine. One thing that I will quickly just preface is that this tutorial won't go too deep into creating like custom mechanics or anything like that. The most we'll be doing is using the existing stuff and just tweaking it a little. So if you're looking for something that's a bit more in depth into like creating custom map mechanics and things like that, unfortunately this series won't really cover that. You're better off jumping into the modding Discord, which I'll link in the description, and asking for help there. So let's jump into it. So as you can see here, I've got my 3D model of the map ready to go. So I'm just going to select everything with A, and then I'm going to export this, and I'm going to specifically export this as a GLTF, a GLTF file, because that is the file type that works really well with Godot. If you don't have this, I believe it is a plugin, or there is a plugin that you can get through the preferences add-ons system. So this GLTF 2.0 format. So if you don't have this, I think it's just a tick box here, and then you'll be able to access the option to export this. So we're going to export this. I'm just going to export this into my web fishing modding folder on my desktop, which is the folder that we made last time. Just make sure that everything looks correct. Yeah, that looks fine. And we're just going to call this ttc.glb. Hit export. So that's going to export that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go into Godot. We're going to open up our decompt project. And if you remember from last time, we made a map scene. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do is going to go to the mods folder. We're going to go to our folder. We're going to go to the map folder, zones, and then we're going to go to my custom zone. So we're going to double click on this and it should open. So if you remember from last time, this is the map in its current state. So what we're going to do is we're just going to basically delete everything that we don't want. So what I tend to do is I tend to look at these sections and I decide which things I want to keep and which things I want to get rid of. Now there's some things that you have to keep because they're important, and there's some things that you can just delete. So let's take a look at each of these sections and we'll go through and I'll explain them as we either delete or edit them. So the first thing, grass tufts, we can delete this. You can delete everything that's in here. We're not going to use those. They're just little decoration pieces. So we're just going to get rid of that. Map main. So this is actually the physical body that you can see here, the ground and everything like that. We're not going to use this either. So I'm just going to essentially delete this entire thing. Now, you will want to potentially remake what this contains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the root node, which is just an empty scene node. I'm going to put it back where it was. And I'm just going to delete everything that's inside map_main instead. Okay. The next thing is the props. Now the props are things like the bridges, the bushes, and things like that. If you want to keep these, feel free to just, keep them around. I'm obviously going to delete them. However, one thing to keep in mind is that it's good to just keep the root node of this in case you want to put all your props in the same place. So keeping everything organized is a good strategy. So we're just going to make sure we get everything. Make sure I don't miss anything when I'm selecting this stuff. So there's a bunch of rocks, fences, a lot of stuff. And we're just going to delete those. Okay, so after props, we have the trees. I'm obviously not going to keep any of the trees, so we'll get rid of tree A, B, C. C gets rid of those. Buildings, we're going to keep the buildings for now. We're going to reuse them, basically. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually move these off to the side, and we'll access them again later. For the NPCs, these are the little molehill things that you can see, as well as the vending machine. So if we take a look, one of the NPCs is the sign. We're going to keep that one. We're going to keep the vending machine as well. It's still knocked over from last time. Let's stand it back up. And then we're also going to keep one of these little molehill signs as well. But we're going to get rid of almost everything else. The only one we're not going to get rid of is the boathouse. So we're going to delete these ones. Keep the boathouse. Now down here, we actually have the NPC characters that are the actual like store characters. So if you want, instead of having the house, which takes you to a different area, you can actually just directly put these two guys in your level, which is what I did for my custom level. So you can do that, or you can keep the house teleport. So I'm gonna keep these two under the map just in case, because I might change my mind later. Now the next thing is going to be the water. What I'm going to do for the water is I'm going to keep the first one, and I'm going to delete all of the other water for the lake water section, because this determines the sort of the fishing spaces. You can see here I got rid of all of that, and there's only one little square left here. And then for the ocean water, I'm just going to leave the ocean water for now. I'm not going to touch it because we're going to basically just keep that. Use it. Now the portals are kind of important for some of them. We don't need the lighthouse one. I'm gonna actually keep it aside because I am gonna reuse it. But you don't have to. The tutorial one, the tutorial _ spawn. This is where you come out from when you finish the tutorial, so we're gonna leave that here. Return spawn, that's where you come out when you obviously return. We have the lighthouse door. But we have these ladders as well. We're not going to use those, so I'm going to get rid of the ladders. The hub entrance and exit, these are actually these are tied to these buildings. So obviously this building was the hub, and this building was the other shop, or the the aquarium. So we have hub exit and hub use, which is the door. So that's entry and that's exit. And likewise we have aqua use, which is the aquarium, and then the aquarium exit. I'm gonna get rid of the ladders. So the ladders basically just take you from one place to another. So in the game, they're used to just like climb ledges. We're gonna get rid of those though. And we'll keep the other portals because we're probably gonna reuse them. But let's take a look at the next section, which is fish zones. Now, these zones determine where you can actually fish, and I think they also determine the type of fish you can catch. Now, I'm not too certain about this. I've just been basically encompassing the areas that I've put the lake water, and that's how I've set them up, because that seems to be how they were set up for this particular map. So what you can do is you can just get rid of all of them except for the first one, and then as you set up your different water areas, you set up fish zones to accommodate. Okay. Next, we're going to go to points. Points are super important. You need these for your game to work. You don't need all of them. You just need at least one of each. These points are essentially the places where those little rings spawn in the water. So they're those rings that spawn that, you know, if you throw your fishing rod in, you basically catch something straight away. So that's some of them. some of them are also where bugs spawn and where metal detector traces are picked up. So if we look here, I'm just going to get rid of all of these except the first one. So we'll get rid of those. You can see each of these. So we've got the fish spawns. So that's the ones I was talking about with the ring. So those will be in the water. And then we have the trash spots. So this is where your metal detector will detect trash. Gonna get rid of all those except one. For the ocean fish spawns, so specifically the ones that spawn that lets you catch ocean fish. And then the hidden spots. The hidden spots are the ones that are for the spectral, I believe, these things. Oh no, these are, sorry, the hidden spots are the ones for the portal, for the new for the void thing, I think. So we're just gonna get rid of all those except one again. And so you basically need one of each of these or your map will potentially crash when you try and use it. So it's good to just keep one of each, and then you can move it where you want, and then you just duplicate them to create more of them. Okay, next is the waterfalls. I'm not going to be using any waterfalls, so I'm just going to get rid of all the waterfalls. I might even just get rid of the waterfall node. Particles. I'm going to leave the particles for now. Now the bounce shrooms I'm actually going to keep one of, because I'm going to show you a neat little trick with those. For the sound, I'm just going to leave the sound alone. The chalk zones are these drawable areas that you can draw on. Now, you can move these around, but you can't change the scale, because it messes with the drawings on them. So just keep that in mind. You can, like, duplicate these and put them around. You can make the platform invisible and just have it be a drawing area where you can draw anywhere. It's a bit finicky, so just play around with it. Give it a go. I'm going to get rid of these, though, because I'm not going to use them. So we're just going to delete chalk zones. Next is the invisible walls. These are basically the walls that prevent the player from going into areas you don't want them to go to. So, you know, the default game has these giant invisible walls that prevent you from going too deep into the forest. I'm going to keep the invisible walls thing, but we're not going to use them just yet. And then off map is just all the stuff that's off map. So we'll keep that, and we'll just delete this stuff. And lastly, the miscellaneous stuff, which is just the spectral skull skeleton pieces that you collect for the spectral rod, and then there's also the spectral shop. So we're just going to delete all that, because we don't need it. Okay, so now we have an empty-ish map with only the sort of most important components left behind. So now let's actually bring in our own assets. So in our mod folder, in our mods, and then our mod folder here, we're going to right-click and create a new folder called assets. And then inside of assets, we're going to create a new folder called model. And then this is where we're actually going to import our model. So we're going to go to where we put our model, which is my Webfishing modding folder. And see here we've got the ttc .glb. So we're going to drag that into a model folder. Godot is going to take a minute to import that. So once that's imported, you'll see here that we've got a bunch of materials, and we've also got the ttc.glb. Now, if I double click this to open it, it says the scene was automatically imported, so it can't be modified. To make changes to it, a new inherited scene can be created. So we're going to click on new inherited. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save this. So we're going to save the scene. We're going to go again to our mods folder, custom folder. And we're going to save this in our model folder as well. And we're just going to call this ttc.tscn. Okay. And so now what that does is that lets us, it basically just gives us a scene version of the 3D model. Now you'll notice the model that I brought in is actually really big. And we obviously don't need it to be this big. So we're going to scale it down. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to drag this scene into our level. I'm actually going to put it into map_main. Okay. Now, like I said, as you can see, it is huge. So I'm going to click on the TTC, and for me, I'm going to set the scale to, I think it's 0.25. I've got a spare one. Accident. Delete that second one. Okay. And the way that I determined the scale of this, by the way, is I took a look at the shops and stuff, and I just used that to determine what the scale should be. So I'm just gonna sink this into the water, and then I'm just gonna bring it over here so it's closer to where the center of it was. And so we're gonna use like the vending machine and stuff to determine whereabouts the scale should be. So this building looks pretty good in terms of, you know, scale. So we're just gonna move this over here so I can see it better. But yeah, that looks okay. World's gonna be a little big. That's fine. What we'll do is we'll go to we'll take this starting area for example, and we'll take our spawn point, so our return spot. We're just gonna drop this over here for now. Now you'll notice some weird things with the textures and stuff. I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. But let's set up our water first. So as you can see, I've brought the level in and it looks fine for the most part. But we are seeing some, like, you know, odd behavior with the water. For instance, we don't want the ocean water to be filling up these spots because we want this to be filled with lake water so that we can have these spots be like fishable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lake water and I'm just going to use this to fill in these areas. So the best way to do that is actually to take our ocean water. What we're going to do is we're just going to move this out of the way. And you'll see here by moving it out of the way, it's no longer filling this section, but it's cutting off here. And there's a really easy fix for that. We're going to move this one over this way. And now you'll see that these areas are nice and empty. So all we need to do is just grab this one, which I think is going to be this one here. And we're just going to bring this, not down, we're going to bring it across. Then we're going to scale this way and scale it this way. And that'll fill in that section that we're missing. Now you'll notice it is still kind of clipping in a weird way here. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm actually just going to move it and rotate it. And then I'm just going to move it again. And it doesn't matter that these are kind of like sitting on top of each other because of the way the material works. It just gives us a really nice looking ocean. So they all just kind of blend together. So you can see here now that looks really good. And this area is empty. So let's take our lake water. And we're just going to use this to fill in this this little section here. And so we can determine how much, you know, how high we want this water. Transform tool sometimes switches to local position rather than the relative transform. I don't remember how to change that. Here we go, use local space, there we go. I'm used to using Unreal, so this is a nice little change of pace for me. And so we can determine where we want this, so I'm going to put it right there. And then what we can do is we can duplicate this, and then if I say I want to fill this little area up with water, you know, shrink this down. And this is another area where it might take a few of these to really like fill it in, to make it work. So just keep that in mind. You might have to tweak it, you might have to change it. When I made this map, when I made the mod, I spent like a few hours just like, you know, things in the right places and stuff. So you might have to do that. It'll be up to you how much effort you want to put in. So I'm going to leave that like that for now. the other important thing to remember is that we have like all these other bits and pieces to consider. So what I did, for instance, is for the aqua building, I actually removed my aquarium and I use this little sandcastle as the aquarium. So I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to delete the aquarium. And in my points, let's see, we'll do the points here, the portals, sorry, not points, portals. We'll do the aqua use. So we're going to bring this over here, and then we're going to bring this down in front like this. So now when you approach this this sandcastle, it'll ask you if you want to go to the aquarium, and then it'll take you there, and then we make sure that the exit is roughly in the same spot. Just gonna make sure this kind of sits nearby. Doesn't have to be exact. Probably want it a bit further out so that you don't immediately get the prompt again. Likewise, we need to do the same for the hub. If this is where our hub is going to be, we need to make sure that the hub use is doorway to this place. So just making sure that this is all lined up. We're going to put it here. I think that's really where they had it in the game. Make sure it's set up like that. And then the hub exit just outside. Hub like so. Tell the perspective when there's no shadows. Okay. We'll also take the vending machine. Take this. Move this over here. I'm just gonna plonk it in this corner. Go. Take the sand a little bit. Take the billboard. The little sign here. Slap that over here. Maybe give it a bit of a lean. There we go. And then we will take the molehill shop. And we'll just chuck this one over here. Make sure it sits on the ground. Looks normal. Perfect. Now the boathouse one is obviously just sitting out in the water. Here. Still a bit difficult to get to, but you know, it's in a nice spot. Okay. So, let's talk about the next thing, which is the look of the map and the materials. So you'll notice that our map looks kind of gross. Everything has this kind of like plasticky sheen to it. So what we're going to do to fix that is, it's a pretty painstaking process. It might be faster to edit him in Blender first. There might be a batch method for it. But essentially what we have to do is we have to go into each of these materials that our model brought in with it. And depending on your model and how it was set up, it might have a lot of materials like mine does. And what we need to do is we just need to change the settings on these materials. So if you go to the material, you go to metallic, you change the specular to 0, and then you change the roughness to 1. Okay, that'll make it so that your material is no longer, you can see here, the little reflective surface goes away when I do that. See all this like sand at the top here. Stops being shiny, and then putting roughness to 1 just gives it that nice kind of like you know, rough texture that we're expecting from sand. So we're going to do this for each of the materials. I'm not going to do all of them in this tutorial. I'm just going to do the ones that kind of like go at the best. So I'll just quickly go through a couple more of these. I mainly just want to try and find this rock texture. It's very pronounced. But yeah, it's a slow process if your model isn't set up correctly. Like I said, I downloaded this one, so I'm just kind of working with what I've got. Ideally, you would just have something set up to make this a bit faster. Maybe a single material that covers everything. But just know that this is, you know, part of, potentially part of the process if your material isn't set up correctly. So feel free to tweak with these settings, by the way, if you do want that kind of metallic surface. If you have some metal objects in your scene, for instance, you probably want that reflective, so you might want to change the metallic property to make it like actually look metallic and shiny. So keep that in mind. So that's essentially how you adjust the material to get rid of the shininess. As you can see, the sections that are no longer shiny, like, it's looking better already, because it doesn't have that like plasticky, like, glad wrap look. The other thing is that some of your textures might look like this, or you have like the black over because your material looks like that. To fix this, you need to tick the transparent flag, which does give your model like the texture transparency. Depending on how your texture is set up and how your faces are set up, it might cause some like weird glitching. It doesn't always happen, but again, it depends on how your material and your model was set up. I don't know the exact reason why this particular model was set up this way, but just keep that in mind when you're working with your own model. Okay, there's only a couple more things I want to go through, because this video is probably getting too long already. One of them is, we talked about these bounce mushrooms before, so I'm going to show you something cool you can do with these. So for my map, what I did was I took the bounce mushrooms and I actually duplicated the model, like the 3D model for this jump pad around the level, and then I put these mushrooms on it. And what I did is I actually went into the properties of the mushroom and I basically just made them invisible. So I turned their visibility to off. They still function, but they're invisible, so you can't see them. And whenever you jumped on these jump pads, you would launch, and it would be like, you know, as if you were jumping on a jump pad. That's kind of cool. The other thing that I will quickly show you is, once you have, I guess, like, you know, everything kind of where you want it and everything set up, don't forget to set up your fish zones. So now that I have a little area of water here, I'm going to take my fish zone. I'm just going to make sure it encompasses this area that I want to be able to fish in. So we're going to take this. Now, again, I highly recommend jumping on the modding Discord and asking more questions about like how the fish zones work. How can you add custom like loot pools and things like that? Because that's the stuff that's going to be, you know, super important for figuring out like if you want a certain area to only contain very specific fish. Now this is something you'll notice if you duplicate something like a collision shape, and then you try and adjust it, it adjusts both of them. Now we don't want that because we want this one to retain its normal shape. So in order to fix that, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the second one, and we're just going to click on this little wrench and screwdriver, and we're going to go make sub resources unique. And now when we edit this one, it's not going to edit the original. So keep that in mind when you're duplicating assets, that if you start modifying their properties, you need to do that so that they don't, it doesn't like modify both of them. Now you only have to do this fishing area stuff for the lakes. You don't have to do it for the ocean. Again, I'm not sure why, it's just a property of the game. And the last thing that I want to quickly mention is the fishing spots. So these points, I highly recommend going around. For the shoreline one, you know, obviously, if I can find it, there it is. I would just go around and dot these around my shoreline. These are just like bugs. So these, I think these are where the birds spawn as well. Like you'll see birds on the beach sometimes. The fish spawn, again, this is for the lake fish. So this is where the fish circles would appear. We're going to make sure that this is in the water. And then we're just going to duplicate this a couple of times, stick them around here. So now those white circles will always show up where these points are. So if you want more variety, just add a bunch of them. Trash spots, again, these are for the metal detector. So you can add these wherever you want. maybe I want this to be my metal detecting area. So we're just going to add a bunch of these around. I'm just hitting Control D to duplicate them, by the way. And then ocean. So we make sure that this one is over in the ocean, somewhere accessible where the player will be able to actually, you know, see them and fish. And then we're just going to duplicate that along the ocean. Oops. The ocean shoreline. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is the fact that when you try and test your map, at first you're going to just essentially fall through your map. And that's because your map won't have any collision by default. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save and demonstrate this concept. In our ttc.glb, sorry, our ttc.tscn file, we're going to see that all of these are kind of like uneditable, which is fine. And what we need to do, it's kind of a tedious process, but we just need to essentially create a collider for each of these objects so that we don't fall through the ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on each of these. We're going to click on Mesh, create Tri-Mesh Static Body. What that does is it creates a collider. Now, if you just leave the collision as is, if we take a look at the collision static body section, look at collision, we look at layer. Layer 1 and mask 1 blocks the player, which is good because it means that we won't fall through it. But it doesn't block the camera, which means if we pan the camera around, it'll clip through. Okay, so I found these pathways. So this will be a good example. So what I'm going to do with these pathways is I'm going to, again, mesh, create tri-mesh static body. That's, you can see here, the blue outline is the collider, which is good. And I'm also going to just take a second to click on the sand here. So you can see now this whole big sand section is now selected. We're going to do the same thing, create tri-mesh static body. And this will be enough for us to be able to test this. So I'm just going to hit play. Okay. Play, again, make sure we select our map, offline solo. Alright, so now we've spawned on the sand, which is great. However, if we move our camera down, you'll see that our camera now clips through the sand, which is no good, right? And also, if we go to an area where we haven't added collision, like here, we just fall through. So that's two things we need to fix. We need to fix the camera clipping through stuff, and we also need to fix the rest of the objects having collision. So to fix the camera issue, once you add the tri-mesh static collider, you need to go to the static body object, and under the collision section, make sure that layer 9 and mask 9 are also selected like this. That'll prevent the camera from being able to clip through it, and it will behave correctly. So again, this is a bit of a tedious process. I don't know if there's like a batch way to do this to just easily do it to everything. But you need to do this for any 3D object that you bring in that you want to have collision. So if you're bringing in a custom map file, you need to do it for the whole thing. Again, in Blender, if you could make this one object, it would probably be way faster. But you essentially just need to go through and, yeah, add a collider. Basically anything that you want to have collision. So you can tell it's got collision because of the blue sort of wireframe. So you can see here, mesh, create tri-mesh static body, making sure that if I go to this, go to the static body, making sure that collision layer 9 is selected, and then I save. Something to keep in mind is in your actual my custom map, making sure that the main underscore zone is loaded in correctly, making sure that it's in the right spot, everything's good, and then changing the spawn position and the tutorial, not the tutorial spawn position, but the spawn position to match where you want the actual start of your level to be. So for me, obviously the entrance to my level is going to be here, so I'm going to make sure my spawn position is there, and the tutorial spawn position is just over in the tutorial island. Now, as well as the main underscore zone that we duplicated, you can actually edit any of these other zones. So for instance, I made a custom aquarium zone by opening the scene editor. And all I did was I just did the same process that we would have done for making this map. So from the previous video, we would go scene, save scene as, we would save it in our zones folder, in our mod folder, and we would basically edit this, and then in our custom map, we would delete the aquarium zone to bring in our own custom aquarium. So just one more thing, in order to, you know, export your new map, we're going to follow the same process that we did in the previous video. So it's the same process where you just take your mod folder, you copy it across to the empty project, and you essentially make sure that you only copy the stuff that you're working on. So I'm going to go to my mod project folder, mods, and I'm going to delete my old modded folder. And I'm just going to show, open in file manager, my current working project. Copy that. Paste it into my empty Godot project. And then in that Godot project, we go to scan, desktop, modding, my mod project. So this is the empty project. Then we're just going to do the project export. We make sure that we see everything here. Again, don't open anything because the things will break, but you should see all your assets in there. And then we're just going to go project, export, Windows desktop, resources, tick the mods folder, export PCK, and then we're just going to untick that. Again, I'm going to make sure I go here, and we're going to call it authorname.modname.pck. Hit save, write the file, make sure runnable isn't selected like last time. And yeah, again, watch the first video if you don't understand any of this, because this is the same process from that first video. But otherwise, that should now update your PCK file. All you need to do is just replace the one that you're currently using with this new one, and everything should be good to go, and your map should just work. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Again, if you have any issues, feel free to leave a comment. I will try my best to get back to you, and I will try my best to help you. But honestly, the best course of action is to actually jump onto the modding Discord. Again, that'll be in the description. Ask there for help. Someone should be able to help you. Hope this video helped. If it did, I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video. Feel free to subscribe. I have more game dev stuff coming hopefully soon. Not necessarily Webfishing or Godot related, but actually my own personal projects. So hopefully that interests you, and if it does, feel free to subscribe and stick around, and you know, you'll be able to see those videos when they come out. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.